On July 7, 1944, at 04:45 hours aboard the Tanapag plane in northern Saipan, Mariana Islands, Marine Artillery Observer Corporal James Whelan scribbled coordinates onto the moisture-soaked paper, details that would protect countless American troops over the ensuing 15 hours. Grid 164-223. Roughly 4,000 or more advancing. Demand every battery at our disposal. This isn't a reconnaissance. Peering through his binoculars, he observed a sight alien to contemporary combat. Hordes of Japanese troops assembling for a massive infantry assault amid an era dominated by machine guns and synchronized barrages. In the murky pre-dawn gloom, he spotted rifles with attached bayonets, commanders brandishing katanas aloft and trailing them, injured fighters with head wrappings, some borne on litters, all pressing onward in the grandest Banzai assault of the Pacific Campaign. Across 23 miles, U.S. artillery pieces, 105mm howitzers, 105mm long toms, 81mm mortars, plus offshore naval cannons, pivoted toward the 164 to 223 grid square. Unbeknownst to the attackers, they rushed headlong into the most advanced targeting network ever fielded in battle, one capable of unleashing greater destructive force on a lone grid in 1 minute than whole armies wielded during World War I. The equations of contemporary conflict were on the verge of being etched in a lexicon the Imperial Japanese Army had stubbornly ignored. The exacting, ruinous arithmetic of time-on-target barrages, hand-adjusted timed shells, and unified command posts that directed devastation from scores of units with the finesse of a maestro guiding an orchestra. Japan's Yokusai strategy, breaking like a gem, had devolved from nimble battlefield ploys into a fatal fantasy. By 1944, tactics once effective as surprise strikes in China versus underarmed opponents had hardened into a dogmatic creed, clashing against foes who had mechanized fighting far beyond Tokyo's grasp. Initial omens emerged at Guadalcanal back in August 1942. The Ichiki detachment, comprising 917 troops from the 28th Infantry Regiment, stormed Marine lines near what U.S. forces dubbed Alligator Creek. Bolstered by preset fires from the 11th Marines Regiment, the defenders eliminated more than 800 assailants overnight. Scant escapees described an unheard-of phenomenon, shells converging at once from various angles, erecting an impenetrable barrier of shrapnel impervious to bravery alone. At Tarawa, come November 1943, the U.S. approach had sharpened further. Fire Direction Centers, FDCs, now leveraged enhanced wireless links and uniform protocols to concentrate volleys from several battalions inside 2 minutes. Charges that thrived on terror in China fell methodically to calculated accuracy. The gulf in U.S. and Japanese gunplay philosophies transcended mere tech gaps. It mirrored a divide between manufacturing prowess and samurai lore. Japanese gunners clung to line-of-sight, spotting, and solo unit efforts, whereas Americans engineered a cohesive framework that might have stunned tacticians of the prior decade as pure fantasy. The U.S. FDC, honed by 1944, stood as a triumph of practical math. Gun commanders employed visual range charts, calculators, and mapping panels to derive solutions, factoring in atmospheric heat, gusts, tube erosion, propellant heat, and planetary spin. A skilled FDC team could process a barrage request for various outfits in less than a minute. Major David Little, leading the 3rd Battalion of the 10th Marines on Saipan, outlined the setup in debriefs. We positioned spotters alongside each rifle company, linked via radio and cable to our FDC. Upon a fire request, we'd mark the objective on our charts, derive adjustments for each gun crew per their locations, and relay orders. In 90 seconds from the alert, projectiles launched skyward from numerous groups, calibrated for concurrent strikes. Nothing akin existed for the Japanese. Rooted in outdated French Great War tactics, their approach favored close-range shooting and isolated actions. They depended on couriers and banners for messaging. Spotters, if present, lacked wireless gear. A single Japanese battery could require 15 minutes to strike what U.S. crews neutralized in 90 seconds. By July 6, 1944, the Japanese foothold on Saipan teetered on collapse. Lieutenant General Yoshitsugu Saito's troops huddled in a northern enclave, squeezed into a zone scarcely 3 miles across. From the island's starting 32s and Army and Navy personnel, under 5,000 stayed battle-ready. U.S. units, the 2nd and 4th Marine Divisions alongside the 27th Infantry Division, encircled them on 3 flanks, C closing the 4th. His last directive, later found on his After the Fighting, General Saito penned these words: "No matter if we press the assault or hold our ground, death awaits us. Yet in that death lies rebirth. We shall seize this moment to honor authentic Japanese valor. I shall lead the survivors onward to strike yet another blow against the Yankee fiends." On July 6th, the Japanese readied themselves for the Gyokusai operation. All fit combatants, soldiers, sailors, and Marines were grouped into attack formations. Ambulatory injured personnel were assigned to subsequent waves. Local civilians, encompassing females and adolescents, received bamboo pikes and instructed to trail the troops. The severely impaired, unable to proceed on foot, were handed explosives and ordered to lie in wait for U.S. forces to approach, then trigger their own demise. The enemy sensed an impending assault. Intel specialist Major James Cogswell had captured bits of Japanese radio traffic hinting at a climactic push. More convincingly, the foe's cannons had fallen quiet, implying they were conserving shells for one last volley. Spotters noted odd activity in enemy positions once night fell. In his post-engagement summary, Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Justice Chambers, who led the 3rd Battalion of the 25th Marines, described how he deployed his unit that night with utmost care. He stationed his most robust platoons along probable enemy paths and ensured each forward observer had alternate signaling methods. He directed the gun coordinator to alert every cannon unit on Saipan for action. Tension hung in the air. We sensed it deeply. This night promised to unfold unlike any before. Unbeknownst to the Japanese as they assembled under cover of darkness, they were marching straight into the deadliest defensive network humanity had yet engineered. Saipan's U.S. artillery embodied unmatched destructive power, orchestrated with meticulous expertise. The arsenal encompassed 4 Marine artillery groups equipped with 105mm howitzers, 48 pieces in all, 2 Marine groups with 150mm howitzers, 24 pieces, 3 Army groups with 100mm howitzers, 36 pieces, 1 Army group with 150mm guns, 12 pieces, scores of 80mm mortars integrated within infantry units, plus offshore bombardment from 6 battleships and 8 cruisers. In total, more than 150 field guns, excluding mortars and shipboard ordnance. These units linked via multiple communication channels, main wireless frequencies, secondary cable connections, and fallback messengers. Each infantry battalion featured skilled spotters. Every gun position had been mapped to pinpoint accuracy. All weapons were zeroed on designated targets ahead of time. The setup allowed concentrated barrages on one spot or dispersed strikes across several simultaneously. Over 3 weeks, Colonel Louis Metzger, head of the 10th Marine Artillery Regiment, fine-tuned the barrage strategy. His planning deputy, Major Thomas Warham, had segmented the terrain into numbered zones on a central overlay map. For their assigned areas, each battery held pre-computed aiming solutions for every zone. Thus, when an observer requested strikes on coordinate 164-223, all units instantly had the required distance and angle adjustments. Precisely at 4:45 on July 7, 1944, around 4,000 Japanese troops and civilian fighters surged ahead. Drawing from declassified Marine Corps documents, the National Budo Museum chronicles this as the grandest Banzai assault in the Pacific Theater. The vanguard comprised survivors from the 136th Infantry Regiment of the 43rd Division, sailors from the ruined Saipan naval argument, and aircraft ground crew scarcely versed in firearms. The hurt limped along with canes, resolute in their quest for honorable end. The attackers traversed the Tanapag Plain Valley, aiming for a 500-yard breach between the 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 105th Infantry Regiment, 27th Infantry Division. As they closed in, their war shouts rang out, "Banzai! Banzai! Banzai!" The chorus of thousands reverberating against the cliffs, evoking a haunting specter that unnerved even battle-hardened Marines. From his vantage on a hill crest above the valley, Corporal Wayne, concealed in his watchpoint, keyed his transmitter right away. Fire request, grid 164, 223. Foe's foot soldiers exposed, roughly battalion-sized force heading south, urgent interdiction needed. Seconds later, the 10th Marines Control Hub replied, affirmative, grid 164, 223. Synchronized impact, all guns engage, impact in 90. The ensuing devastation stemmed from 2 years of U.S. innovation in synchronized barrages. Inside the control hub, a seamless routine of computations kicked off. The designated zone appeared on the primary diagram. Ranges and bearings from each gun site were gauged using exact tools. Atmospheric factors received adjustments. The synchronized impact technique marked the zenith of gunplay harmony. Rather than units blasting at will, producing a staggered curtain of fire that let adversaries seek shelter, each calculated its launch to ensure projectiles converged at the identical instant. Distant batteries unleashed early, nearer ones held back. The sudden onslaught meant that scores, perhaps hundreds, of projectiles rained down from the heavens all at once, offering zero alert. Precisely at 4:47, the heavens over the oncoming Japanese forces burst open. According to the Marine Corps' official chronicle, the opening salvo encompassed rounds from 12 artillery units, augmented by naval shelling. The impact on the tightly clustered Japanese troops was utterly ruinous. Reports confirm that the supporting 105th Infantry Artillery unleashed more than 2,600 shells within the initial hour. The hand-adjusted time delay fuses, demanding greater expertise than the proximity types that came later, delivered lethal results when handled correctly. Gun teams had devoted days to honing their fuse trimming methods, streamlining some to just seconds. Undeterred, the Japanese pressed on. This embodied the Banzai spirit, persisting against overwhelming futility. The remnants navigated amid the corpses of fallen allies, yelling "Banzai" as they launched the Totsugeki assault. Corporal Wan kept directing refinements, shortened by 200, shift left 100. Foe foot soldiers holding their push, call for another salvo. What set U.S. artillery apart in 1944 from earlier conflicts was its capacity to sustain precise adaptive barrages amid moving adversaries. Spotters didn't merely summon a volley and cross fingers, they monitored impacts, issued tweaks, and guided the blasts across hostile ranks. Fire control hubs employed a tactic dubbed ladder fire, tailored for Banzai rushes. As the enemy closed in, gunners would unleash a row of shots along their leading edge, then methodically shift the curtain rearward through the column, forward once more, and back again, like a massive blade harvesting grain. By Oro 5:30, the primary Japanese surge had gained just 400 yards, exacting a horrific toll. Corpses blanketed the basin below. The injured dragged themselves atop the slain, determined to proceed. Certain clusters sought shelter in gullies and passes, only for spotters to direct overhead detonations that transformed those spots into fatal ambushes. For all its ferocity, the cannonade couldn't halt every Japanese fighter. By Osru 600, fragmented bands had breached the primary barricade. The 105th Infantry Regiment absorbed the heaviest onslaught. Its frontline battalions endured 406 fatalities and 512 injuries, approaching 80% losses. Per National World War II Museum archives, this clash highlighted the pinnacle of U.S. fusion between close-range and distant fire aid. Each Marine rifle unit included 60mm mortars in its armament squad. Every battalion featured 81mm mortars. Such weapons targeted foes too near for big guns. The danger close threshold where risks to allies loomed. At 06:55, the biggest surviving Japanese contingent, roughly 600 strong, broke through U.S. positions and overwhelmed gun emplacements of the 3rd Battalion, 10th Marines. The cannoneers yanked breeches from their howitzers and battled as foot soldiers. Certain sections lowered their barrels to blast directly at the onrushing Japanese, employing skipping shots to ricochet ordnance from the terrain. Amid the fray, naval forces amplified the carnage. The battleship USS Tennessee and cruiser USS Louisville, positioned off the coast expressly to counter nocturnal assaults, brought their 14-inch and 8-inch ordnance to bear, firing flares for light and explosive shells for havoc. Shore-based fire coordinators linked straight to shipboard naval liaisons. Spotting Japanese backups mustering for a follow-up assault, the order rang out. Naval barrage at grid 159-215, exposed infantry. Navy logs reveal USS Tennessee expended 293 14-inch projectiles in the action, with USS Louisville adding 322 8-inch rounds. By ORH 7:30, the Banzai onslaught had crumbled into scattered Japanese pockets, seeking any breach in American defenses. The meticulously orchestrated mass assault lay broken by integrated gunpower. Clusters of 5 to 20 warriors would sporadically dart from hiding, howl Banzai, and rush the closest U.S. outpost. U.S. artillery now focused on suppressive and blocking shots, sporadic blasts on probable rally points and paths to disrupt Japanese regrouping. At intervals, a gully or depression would ignite in detonations as gunners sealed off any secure terrain for the foe. The saddest stage unfolded near Oro 900 when immobile Japanese casualties initiated their final frantic bids. Eyewitness testimonies, preserved in formal annals, describe one-legged men lurching ahead on sticks clutched with explosives. Badly hurt troops slithered toward U.S. lines, shoving weapons before them. The turmoil of the Banzai frenzy yielded 3 Medal of Honor winners, their deeds meticulously outlined in citations. Lieutenant Co-Lieutenant William J. O'Brien, who led the 1st Battalion of the 105th Infantry, turned down medical evacuation even after sustaining injuries. As Japanese troops stormed his headquarters, he climbed aboard a jeep equipped with a .50 caliber machine gun amid intense gunfire to aim it at the advancing foes. Once the ammo ran dry, he pressed on with dual handguns until he fell in combat. His remains were discovered encircled by no fewer than 30 slain Japanese troops. The Medal of Honor commendation, endorsed by President Truman on May 27, 1945, highlights his remarkable bravery and fearlessness. Private Thomas A. Baker from Company A, 105th Infantry, took out a Japanese outpost using a bazooka before repelling several assaults, accounting for at least 24 enemy fatalities on his own. Badly injured and incapable of moving on foot, he declined to be pulled back. His renowned final remark to fellow soldiers was, "Get the hell away from me." Upon reclaiming his spot, troops found Baker deceased, leaning on a tree with a spent .45 pistol gripped in his hand and 8 Japanese bodies nearby. The Medal of Honor was granted posthumously on May 9, 1945. Captain Benjamin L. Salomon, acting as the surgeon for the 2nd Battalion of the 105th Infantry, was aiding the injured when Japanese infiltrators breached his medical tent. He dispatched 4 using his rifle, then instructed the casualties to retreat while he shielded their escape with machine gun fire. His corpse was located draped over the gun, facing 98 dead Japanese adversaries. He had endured 76 gunshot injuries and 24 bayonet strikes. Owing to concerns under the Geneva Convention regarding armed medics, his Medal of Honor approval came only on May 1, 2002. With morning light fully illuminating Saipan at 1,000 hours, the magnitude of the massacre came into sharp focus. Dedicated counting units later confirmed 4,311 Japanese fatalities from the onslaught. U.S. losses reached about 1,000 dead and injured, leaving the 105th Infantry Regiment largely incapacitated as a combat force. The numbers painted a grim picture. During the 15-hour clash, American guns unleashed roughly 12,000 shells. Coordination came from fire control hubs directing 18 distinct artillery groups, alongside ship-based bombardment. The setup operated flawlessly as intended. Lieutenant Colonel Lewis Walt, surveying the devastation, noted in his formal account that the foe charged with immense valor, yet lacked contemporary strategic insight. Our artillery coordination worked precisely according to plan. Forward spotters excelled beyond measure. The control stations operated without a hitch. As daylight intensified, U.S. burial detail squads started the somber task of gathering the fallen. The death toll's enormity stood unmatched in the Pacific Theater. Major Edward McCarthy, heading the 2nd Battalion of the 105th Infantry, one of the hardest-hit outfits, likened the scene in his post-battle summary to a herd rush in a cowboy film, save for the relentless Japanese advance. Behind American positions, the mental toll proved immense. Numerous Marines and GIs had seen combat deaths prior, yet never at such volume. The methodical eradication of thousands of lives, however vital, etched lasting scars. Captain Edmund G. Love, chronicler for the 27th Division and future author on the engagement, spoke with participants right after the fray. His archived records in the National Archives reflect the unfiltered sentiments. Veterans hardened by prior ordeals were profoundly rattled, not from terror, since the Japanese stood little chance, but from the overwhelming volume of slaughter. Remaining Japanese forces withdrew into caverns across northern Saipan. One such figure was Captain Sakai Ober, who orchestrated partisan operations for 16 more months until yielding in December 1945, 3 months post-Japan's surrender. His endurance and ongoing defiance appear extensively in Army documents and the volume Ober, The Last Samurai Saipan 1944-45. General Saito, the originator of the assault, performed seppuku on July 10, 1944, 3 days following the botched push. Admiral Tuichi Nagamo, once leader of the Pearl Harbor Strike Group, had ended his life on July 6, the day preceding the charge. Their passings signaled the collapse of structured Japanese opposition on Saipan. The Saipan Banzai assault illustrated groundbreaking advances in warfare tech and strategy. The fire control framework, pioneered at Fort Sill in the 1930s, elevated gunnery from intuition to precision. Rather than relying on battery leaders' instincts, expert operators applied computational methods to refine all facets of bombardment aid. This approach featured visual firing charts that bypassed intricate math, uniform radio protocols to cut chatter delays, and pre-mapped gun sights precise to 1 meter. Weather units delivered regular atmospheric briefings as adjustment techniques compensated for gun tube degradation and shell inconsistencies. The pinnacle of this synchronized effort came through time-on-target operations, a distinctive American skill during that era. Several artillery units would work backward from a predetermined strike moment, unleashing salvos in a staggered pattern to ensure every projectile landed at once. This method, reliant on exact timing and coordination, amplified the terror and devastation of cannon barrages. Although Japanese commanders had been alerted to U.S. artillery prowess, they dismissed the cautions. Officers who witnessed German Wehrmacht maneuvers in Europe shared insights on American fire support strategies. Diplomats stationed in neutral nations relayed details about the U.S. manufacturing output for shells, churning out millions monthly. For the Japanese 32nd Army on Okinawa, Operations Chief Colonel Hiromichi Yahara examined U.S. methods and cautioned against reckless assaults. During wartime strategy meetings, he contended that hurling waves of troops into contemporary armaments spelled certain doom. Higher-ups, convinced that inner resolve could trump hardware superiority, rejected his advice. These Banzai rushes exposed deep cracks in Japan's ethnocentric worldview. Every soldier was indoctrinated with the notion that Americans lacked grit, obsessed with comfort and gadgets, and would crumble under the resolve of fighters embodying Yamato Damashi, the unyielding national soul. This prejudice boomeranged. U.S. troops, shocked by the frenzied charges in initial clashes, viewed them by 1944 as signs of enemy delusion. Such assaults cemented biases among Americans that shaped key choices, like deploying atomic bombs the following year. Rather than meeting the rushes head-on, Americans countered with superior barrages, showcasing both smart maneuvers and societal contrasts. The U.S. treated conflict as a puzzle to crack via innovation and structure, while Japan framed it as a crucible for moral fortitude. In these clashes of mindsets, machinery prevailed every time. The Saipan Banzai offensive marked the peak of 2 years of U.S. refinement and adjustment. Back in early 1942, American units found themselves unprepared for Japanese approaches. By summer 1944, they had crafted targeted countermeasures that flipped enemy advantages into liabilities. This progress appeared in post-battle assessments, Guadalcanal, August 1942. Faux nighttime assaults gained early ground via shock and ferocity. Suggest enhancing nocturnal perimeter defenses, New Georgia, July 1943. Integrated barrier volleys shattered nearly all incoming waves. Groups backed by pre-sighted guns endured few losses, Tarawa, November 1943. Time-on-target barrages excelled against concealed adversaries, advised training every forward observer in rapid engagement protocols. Saipan, July 1944. The adversary's Banzai push got obliterated by unified artillery. No doctrinal revisions needed. GIs, once rattled by howling attackers lunging with fixed blades, now regarded these forays as prime chances to inflict havoc instead of perils. Opting for the Saipan charge signaled a disastrous lapse in Japanese command judgment. General Saito recognized its futility. His last dispatches portrayed it as a ceremonial end rather than a viable tactical move with real goals. In his writings, Lieutenant General Holland Smith, leader of the V Amphibious Corps, dissected the enemy's choice. Militarily speaking, the Banzai foray was madness. Japanese forces held robust hideouts in Saipan's northern caverns and gullies. A phased retreat under fire might have inflicted heavy tolls on us and delayed threats to their mainland, but they exposed themselves in the flatlands, where our armament edge dominated utterly. Japan's resistance to evolving against advanced weaponry arose from entrenched traditions and beliefs that exalted ethereal ideals above tangible facts. Leaders advocating retreats or protective stances faced accusations of timidity. What followed was wholesale operational self-destruction. The U.S. gun network that annihilated the Saipan charge integrated several cutting-edge advancements. Wireless links. Forward spotters relied on the SCR-300 and SCR-610 FM sets, delivering crisp, interference-resistant signals amid combat signal clutter. Spanning 3 to 5 miles, these enabled chats with various fire direction centers at once. Mapping tools. U.S. batteries employed state-of-the-art instruments to pinpoint emplacements with remarkable precision. Sites linked to a shared coordinate framework let any spotter summon support from any unit, sans intricate math. Weather gear. Artillery backing played a key role. Every artillery unit included a weather team that launched balloons 4 times a day to gauge wind velocity and direction across different heights. Such information proved essential for managing extended-range shooting devices. Tools like the M7 chart-based firing table and the M10 plotting panel enabled fire direction centers to monitor several enemy positions and Allied troops at once, resolving intricate gunnery challenges in mere moments instead of longer spans. The obliteration of the Saipan Banzai assault carried wider strategic consequences outside the local conflict. News arriving in Tokyo about more than 4,000 troops perishing in one desperate rush, with hardly any U.S. losses, helped trigger the collapse of Prime Minister Hideki Tojo's administration on July 18, 1944. Saipan's capture positioned American B-29 bombers just 250 miles from Tokyo. Come November 1944, aircraft took off from the island's restored runways to hit targets across Japan. Admiral Osami Nagano later remarked, "Our war was lost with the loss of Saipan." Even though Saipan's events clearly showed the pointlessness of such tactics, Japanese troops staged additional Banzai rushes on Guam, Tinian, Peleliu, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa, all concluding in comparable massacres. This stubborn resistance to change exacted a toll of hundreds of thousands of lives. 9 months following Saipan, during the Okinawa campaign in May 1945, the ultimate refinement of U.S. defenses against Banzai attacks unfolded as the Japanese 32nd Army mounted frantic assaults on May 4th. The toll proved even grimmer than before. That day's counterpush involved 5,000 Japanese fighters storming American positions. In under 6 hours, 4,500 lay dead. U.S. forces reported 335 losses. The near 15-to-1 elimination rate highlighted the total supremacy of synchronized barrages over massed infantry surges. At Okinawa, Americans incorporated fresh tactics such as enhanced white phosphorus rounds for spotting and morale-breaking impact, tighter coordination among Marine and Army gun crews, and non-stop radar waves to detect foe advances under cover of darkness. The prowess of U.S. artillery in dismantling Banzai waves sparked deep inquiries into the essence of contemporary combat. The mechanized annihilation of valiant yet ill-advised fighters, though required for victory, weighed heavily on numerous U.S. soldiers involved. Lieutenant Colonel Justice Chambers, whose outfit aided in thwarting the rush, noted in his private notes, There is no glory in what we did. We killed thousands of brave men who never had a chance. Yes, they were trying to kill us. Yes, it was necessary. But turning artillery into an assembly line of death is not war as our fathers knew it. The lopsided slaughter, enabled by U.S. edges in tech and structure, signaled an emerging form of battle where bravery by itself offered no shield against unified barrages. Methods honed to counter Japanese Banzai assaults shaped Army strategies for years to come. The Fire Direction Center model turned into a staple across contemporary forces. Time-on-target operations grew commonplace in drills, linking spotters ahead with ground troops solidified as standard practice. In Korea just 5 years on, U.S. units applied the same approaches to shatter Chinese mass assaults. During the 1951 fight at Chipyong-ni, cannon fire wiped out a full Chinese division in a nighttime push. Like their Japanese predecessors, the Chinese discovered that valor alone couldn't prevail over orchestrated firepower. The Vietnam conflict brought more advances, featuring digital systems for gunnery math and chopper-deployed spotters. The 1991 Gulf War displayed GPS-directed shells, yet the core idea, concentrated observer-guided volleys, echoed unchanged from Saipan. Long after the clash, Saipan veterans pondered their ordeal. During the 1994 50th anniversary event, those who endured reunited to recall that dreadful dawn. Arthur Robinson, a private in the 105th Infantry who made it through the onslaught, shared, "You have to understand, we didn't want to kill them all, but they kept coming, wave after wave. Our artillery just cut them down. It was horrible. But what choice did we have?" The sheer effectiveness of the carnage lingered in the minds of many fighters. They triumphed not via greater bravery or prowess, but through advanced setups and overwhelming guns. It marked a win devoid of honor, achievement lacking fulfillment. The rout of the Japanese Banzai push on Saipan embodied the clash of rival military mindsets. Japan held that inner resolve and readiness to perish could surmount any shortfall in resources. America trusted that guns, innovation, and methodical planning would invariably crush swarm tactics. The result stood inevitable from the moment these views met. The U.S. gun network, with its advanced spotters, control hubs, synchronized strikes, and linked signals, embodied the shift of factory efficiency principles to the battlefield. The Banzai assault of the Japanese, drawing from samurai heritage and Shinto views on noble death, harkened back to a bygone time. In 1944, it clashed futilely with U.S. artillery. This amounted to organized self-destruction masquerading as strategy. The desperate Saipan assault imparted vital insights, but only one adversary lived to implement them. For the U.S. forces, it confirmed the value of their heavy emphasis on guns and targeting mechanisms. The capacity to concentrate salvos from various units onto one spot in mere moments had shown itself as game-changing. For Japan, the realization arrived far too belatedly. A few officers did grasp it and adjust during Iwo Jima and subsequently at Okinawa. Leaders such as Tadamichi Kuribayashi and Mitsuru Ushijima shunned massive Banzai rushes, opting for entrenched defenses that inflicted heavy losses on Americans, though such shifts were rare. Japan's overall armed forces never officially discarded the Banzai tactic. Captain Sakai, who endured by steering clear of the central push and resorting to hit-and-run tactics, would afterward muse, "That evening we discovered that bravery devoid of tech holds no value in contemporary conflict. The Americans didn't break our resolve. They just rendered it pointless." Tallying the Saipan Banzai's grim toll exposes the cold calculus of mechanized combat. Japanese losses in the assault, 4,301 verified fatalities, injuries, unrecorded, many perished soon after. Overall attackers, roughly 4,000 to 4,300, fatality ratio approaching 100%. U.S. losses, 1st and 2nd Battalions of the 105th Infantry, 406 dead, 512 hurt. 3rd Battalion of the 10th Marines, 127 total casualties. Aggregate American toll, about 1,000. Injury rate, 40% among involved groups. Shells fired, over 12,000 artillery projectiles estimated, plus countless mortar blasts, plus shipboard barrages with 615 recorded large-bore rounds. In terms of bang for the buck, it boiled down to around 3 shells per enemy downed. These figures paint a picture of factory-like precision in slaughter. The U.S. had transformed battle into a formula. Firepower times synchronization yields triumph. The Saipan Banzai incident prompts enduring queries for today's conflicts. Does raw valor have room in tech-driven fights? Can gadgets fully erase the personal side of battle? Does streamlined lethality erode the ethics of the fighters? Today's U.S. strategy, molded by ordeals like Saipan, prioritizes dominant barrages and gadget edges. The aim: secure wins while sparing one's own troops, regardless of the lopsided foe toll. Such methods work well, yet they spark ethical dilemmas over war's essence. Saipan's annihilation of the Japanese Banzai signified the close of a combat chapter. No longer would armies hurl waves of foot soldiers at advanced weaponry, anticipating survival. The allure of the rush, horsemen with blades, troops with fixed bayonets, faded amid the Tanapag Plains barrage. Rising from the haze and slaughter came a fresh grasp of war as assembly line operation. Success would favor not the boldest, but those commanding superior setups, targeting networks, signal links, supply chains. People still mattered, but only as part of tech and structural dominance. Those Japanese troops storming U.S. guns on July 7, 1944, ranked among the final believers that inner fortitude could trump hardware gaps. Their end settled it. In today's fights, Spirit San's tools fall short. The U.S. gun network that obliterated them embodied war's tomorrow. Linked, precise, devastatingly productive, the 4,300 Japanese who fell displayed remarkable bravery. They merited more than becoming grist for the U.S. artillery mill. Yet their leaders, shackled by dogma and custom, doomed them to a pointless end that merely highlighted their outdated approach. Their loss endures as a timeless caution. In current battles, guts by itself won't suffice. Gear, structure, and overwhelming force will crush human surges, however valiant the individuals. Saipan buried the era of the heroic onslaught, felled by U.S. guns that recast combat as numbers and numbers as wholesale demise. American gun teamwork wiped out the Banzai rush. More crucially, it erased the notion of Banzai itself, unmasking it as a quaint relic in mechanized times. In Saipan's death trap, valor faced unity, zeal clashed with machinery, legacy battled innovation, innovation prevailed.